Hi guys, welcome to another video. As promised last week, I will channel my inner angry person. I'm gonna be honest, since I'm not from America, it's sometimes kinda hard to understand all the terminology. I'll just call where I studied university, because that's what I call it in Dutch. I have a document with all the classes. I basically kinda structured it per professor, so that's what we're gonna do. I will probably get more heated as I keep on talking about it. I'm gonna start off with the worst one. We had a class called Dutch Proficiency, and throughout the year we had to do a bunch of stuff, like a group assignment and like a presentation thingy, and we had to improve like our not vocabulary but the way we pronounce words in Dutch, and we had to do 5 writing assignments throughout the year. And every writing assignment, that was like my strong point in my opinion. Like in high school, my teachers would always like grade me so high. I remember a teacher telling me like, not your best work, and I had like an 8 out of 10. I was very confident about those. In university, everything is graded out of 20, so you need to have at least a 10 out of 20 to succeed, to not fail your course. And for the writing part, I was failing. Like I had an 8 out of 10, a 9, maybe even less, and I was just like, what? That's like my main skill. This is what I'm proud about. And the only criticism I ever had was like, yeah, your writing style is too informal. And I was like, then teach me. Like, it's not a creative writing class, so it's not like plot driven whatever. And I failed. If my last assignment was like, I had to have like a high mark just to succeed. If my last assignment wasn't good enough, I failed like writing, which I was not proud of anymore whatsoever after a year of failing. It was 2 a.m. in the morning. I had this friend who really loved writing and reading, and I swear to God, the dude must have been so patient, because every time we had like a writing assignment, I would just freak out. So I wanted to do like this conversation between 2 women. Just from the way they talked to each other, it became apparent eventually that they were a couple, but like there's no explicit anything. It's just a conversation, which is a really cool idea, right? I hope. It was 2 a.m. in the morning, and I hadn't written a word, and the deadline was like the next morning. So I messaged my friend like, I can do this, I really can do this, I'm gonna fail. And he's like, just write how you feel right now, and then write the entire assignment like in one go, just 3, 2, 1, go. So I wrote how I felt, and it was like very melodramatic and cringy, like, I hate myself, at least my friends love me, because you know, like stuff like that. Like, I thought I was good at writing, but I suck. And I never even started writing that piece about the lesbian couple. My like self-hatred, I handed it in as my assignment. So this is like an episode of like a Netflix teenage drama, but like the next class, she was like, some of you are so insecure, like it's fine, you're learning. And she met me. So I get my assignment and I have a 20 out of 20, like the maximum score. That hasn't happened to me at all ever again. And I was like, I had that one friend, but that was it. Or at least in my literature class. And I remember everybody else thought I was weird, and I didn't care. I stood up and I laid on the floor. I just laid there. I haven't written a word in fiction ever again. The only thing I ever wrote was like assignments. It really did squash whatever confidence I had. The second class I want to talk about is History of Literature and English. First year me, 18-year-old me, was like really just fooling around. But second year me rolls around and we have History of Literature and English too, and I was such a pro. What my strong point is I can type very fast, so I just took my laptop to class and I wrote down everything she said, everything this woman said, and I was so prepared. I studied it all. I had a 13, which is fine. But yeah, I remember that we got like examples of exam questions, and something she would always ask was to like link an author to his work, or vice versa, or put the works in chronological order, or like the important novels. I had to study that like really out of my head. Like I had to memorize it all, because every kind of context was just missing. I'm going to give an example. Every professor has like their own specialization as well. A lot of my professors have post-colonialism. She did as well, and it always influences their lessons, which I think is not good. When you just give a general overview of history of literature in English, it is important that you give us a good overview. Post-colonialism rolls around, right? And so I saw a lot of African American authors. I can tell you about works of those authors, but I cannot tell you why they weren't studied, like what the time period was, what works were popular around that time, what the mindset was, when did everything change, why and how. Like every kind of frame was just missing. Like I know a bunch of tiny details, but I don't know like an overall overview. I don't. It was just missing, which gives a very weak basis to further my education on. The third lesson, or like the third professor, is an infamous one. I'm not gonna say his name. He gave like, well, I have a history of Dutch literature, but he also gave like Dutch poetry, and we had him for 3 years. But he went to America or like some country, and suddenly we had like interns, and we were so happy because this man, what he taught me, I knew him for 3 years, and he taught me how to please narcissists. Oh man, he would yell at a girl because of her face. Like she would be like, "Stop looking at me like that," and she was like, "I'm sorry, professor, I'm just looking neutrally," and he was like, "You're looking at me like a bitch." Or and then the same girl would look out of the window, you know, just thinking. Whenever I'm thinking, I look out of the window just instinctively. So she would look out of the window and he would be like, "Pay attention." Or I remember this girl would look just at her watch, and he would go off like out of control, like, "Am I not interesting enough? Yeah, I don't deserve to be listened to. You're going to end up as a saleswoman in a store. You will never graduate here." I honestly learned just to, like, the first time that happened, he also would just like throw like his what's it called, chalk, but then he would switch and I have this thing, I really don't know what it's called, like the little block on your, I really don't know what it's called, and he would stand on it with one foot and be like, "I'm a flamingo." What happened was that he oftentimes had like computer problems, like every old professor does, and everybody would just be like, but it's also like a language class full of people who really didn't care about technology, and I don't know why I felt like because I was the most knowledgeable I had to do something. So I came up to him and I helped him, but he was scary, right? So it was like, I'm gonna be honest, I'm pretty brave. So I was like, "Hey professor, you just have to click here and then you can change the sound." And I was like, "Oh, thank you." And we kind of gradually changed to like, he would have something wrong with his computer, so he would just go, and then he would like just stare at me, and I'd be like, "Be right there." I'm horrible, I'm so sorry. One time I colored my hair red. I walked into class with my new red hair, and he would be like, "Oh." I learned how to deal with that, right? Because I remember that I was almost late, and if you're late, you get kicked out of class. So I was like, "I'm sorry for being late," to just like redirect the fact that my hair changed color. Ah man, that man. Oof. Also, during exams, it was like a lot at my university. A lot of exams are just one-on-one, face-to-face with your professor, and you have to verbally tell them what you learned. And everybody walked into that classroom with that man during exam, and everybody came out crying. Every single one. We were just waiting in line to go outside crying, including me. I cried when I failed that class as well. First year me was partying. Second year me was very responsible. Ooh, and he really is the type of person to like get these anger outbursts, so he had to formally apologize to his boss and his boss's boss as well because of what he did in meetings. This man is like a bonding moment for people. The other day, I'm looking for a new job, and I had this interview with this girl, and she was like, I studied literature and linguistics too at your university. Is this one professor still teaching? And I was like, yes. I have had a lot of conversations about that professor that blossomed into beautiful friendships. Speaking of notorious people, we had English proficiency as well, and the dude that gave that class was very well loved by everyone. Like I said, I didn't really have that many friends, and I hated the guy. We had him for 2 years. First year I was fine, honestly, but second year... So what we had to do was, we had a test every class, so every week we had like a vocabulary test of all things. So I had to study every weekend, and then every week as well we had to read a short story, and then every other week we had to make a presentation about the short story. But there was always a 50% chance that he was like, good news guys, no test today. Good news guys, no presentation today. And I am the type of person who doesn't like putting a lot of work and effort into something just for my teacher to say good news guys. Like, imagine doing homework, right? And you're working really hard to make sure your assignment is perfect and you get a good grade, and you come to school, you want to hand it in, and your teacher is like, good news guys, you don't have to hand it in. Like, I could have, you know how busy university students are, I could have been learning for another class, I could have done like something of my very big pile of work, but no, I studied for your unnecessary test. It's and everybody loved him so much, because every time it was like, good news guys, no presentation, hooray! Like, I'm not the biggest fan of presenting either, but if I've worked 5 hours on the thing, I want to have my 10 minutes of fame, okay? I want to show you them. Anyways, everybody was always like, hooray, no test, and I was just sitting there like, again. I remember when Trump got elected, yeah, and he would be like, good news guys, we're just not gonna talk about class at all, we're gonna talk about Trump. And everybody was like, oh, spicy. And I was just like, I have literally better places to be. Like, if it was not extremely rude to be like no and just walk away, I would have done it. I sat there in class for 2 hours and I just worked on something else. Thing is that he liked students that would oppose his like vision, mindset, interpretation of literature and stuff like that. So he liked me because of the times I would just be like, no. And I have to admit, he was a cool guy, just not a good professor at all. I gave him like my second exam with him. Me and I think 2 other students, we gave him a meme to like put. It's like a Dutch English like word joke, so it doesn't really work in English. But we gave it to him and he put it like on his door of his office, so that everybody saw it. Like, it was really cool, but I hated the way he would teach. Okay, let's change tunes a little bit, because I loved linguistics. I like I said before, I specialized in linguistics. I have English linguistics and general linguistics, which are great. Anyways, this man was so organized. The only thing that linguistics professors do is thinking that they're very important. I have heard multiple rants throughout my student career of stuff like, linguistics is important, people just don't realize it. Which, if anything, gives me the feeling that linguistics is not that important. Either way, it is a lot of fun. The only thing, so the way our university structure works is that things cost like study points, and one study point equals like X amount of hours you should spend on that course. Let's say a course is 6 study points, which usually is a maximum for just like a half-year course. It will usually be like your lectures and like maybe a big presentation, or your lectures and a big assignment, or lectures and then also like practici, what's it called, like where you have to do like exercises in the field, more like once more theory and once more practical. But this dude, every time it will be like a very, very difficult exam. Usually it would be even like an exam split in 2 days because it's so much, but like a theory lesson and then a practical lesson and then an assignment. Not even something with a purpose or something, just I will give you an assignment because my class is important. Yeah, I made a lot of those. Another more positive one was general trends of philosophy. I don't really know how to translate it, but the dude was crazy. Absolutely crazy. He would talk about enlightenment, like the enlightenment period, and like enlightenment and like lights, you know, ceiling lights is the same word in Dutch. So it would be like types of enlightenment. He would just show a bunch of pictures of ceiling lights, and then he would have a slide that just said sorry. Another one is like you have to, when there's exams, you have to leave your bag in front of the class, or I don't know, at the door at the back. There was this one student who handed in his exam and he was like looking for his bag, and it took so long that the professor said, just choose one and get out of here. You get the point. It was really funny. We had a professor who also thought that linguistics was very important, and we had him for the literal translation is like variation linguistics, but it's like dialects and how different areas pronounce stuff. It doesn't sound important, right? So like no wonder they're insecure about it. How we work is you have to hand in like a very, 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 very big research assignment at the end of like your 4th year you study, which is your master's, and then also at the end of your 3rd year. And like the 4th year one is bigger than your 3rd year one, but it's big anyways for both. And I had him as like my supervisor. He was a horrible supervisor. I wanted to do this questionnaire thing, and he checked it for me before I put it online, and one question was in there twice and had a bunch of spelling mistakes, so I don't know what happened. Also, he wouldn't answer to my mails for like half a year, and I'm gonna be honest, I had to redo that big ass assignment the next year, partly because he just didn't answer and I didn't know how to proceed. I didn't fail because of him, but in part, you know, like it's also because of me. But anyways, he wouldn't answer my mails for half a year, and then he wrote me a mail saying like, I'm sorry, I had like trouble. We basically mid-year switched like mailing systems, so he was like, I had some trouble with the new system. I only got like immigrated to this system right now. The year after, he sent that same email like, I'm sorry, I didn't answer, I had trouble immigrating to the new system. He sent the exact mail to another student, also because he didn't answer, and that student also failed. I'm like not that heated about it because the next thing I'm going to tell. So I had an exam, and this was my favorite course of my entire one of my favorite courses. I loved that course so much. It was basically the entire like history of Dutch like language and why it sounds the way it sounds and why we use these. It was so cool. It was really cool. I loved it. I was sitting there every week, front row with my laptop. I was so excited, and then exam rolls around. This dude, I swear to God, he is hangry. Like, let's say he has to do exams all day long. Whoever gets in that class at 12 or at 6 will fail, and that's almost what happened to me. I was so freaking excited. He asked me a question and I was like, I know the answer. I know every little detail of the answer. And I even went out of my way and I was like, can I have a piece of paper so I can make a fucking graph about everything I know and like the time periods I will say everything. So I'm like really, really excited. Like, I was genuinely sitting there going like, okay, so first we had this and then this happened, and by the way, these are some little details, we didn't really have to study this, but also this happened by the way, and because this happened, like I was going for it. I was so excited. So the second question rolls around, the third question. By the third question, I knew that there was like a part that I had forgotten, so I was like, something else should be here, but I forgot. But anyways, this is my final answer, and he looks at me and he goes, do you have anything to add? And I go, well, yeah, actually, really thank you for this course. This was my favorite one of the entire semester. I had so much fun. And he was like, no, your answers. And I was like, oh, no, I'm finished. And here you go. And he was like, yeah, I was supposed to give you like a 14, which is really good. Our system, like 10 till 13 is like how much you normally get, and everything above that is like, wow, good job. So he said, I wanted to give you a 14, but you're not taking my course very seriously, so I'll give you a -3 out of 20. And I was speechless. It was 12, it was lunchtime, and I remember I didn't know what to say, because I took his course very seriously. He saw me half a year, like every week, being like, I took it very seriously. He saw me. I was just very happy because of the freaking course. I was happy because of the material we had to study, and I knew it. Oh man, whenever I'm passionate about something, it just gets squashed. So I didn't know what to say, and I answered, well, no, I just don't take myself seriously. I didn't know what to say, okay? So he answered, this is not a therapy session. And I was just like, sorry. Well, I have to go now. I'm gonna cry in the toilet. Obviously I didn't say that, but like I'm pretty sure you could just read it from my face. There's something fun about your mid-20s is just exchanging exam horror stories. This one always like is a hit. Next class, I'm going to keep it short, is Introduction to European Linguistics. First of all, the dude that gave this course was so hot. I remember one time he took off his jacket, and he had like this big, like, he had a very tight t-shirt, and all the girls just went like but yeah, I apart from that, I hated his course. I already kind of ranted about it, but we were supposed to see the entire history of European literature. Instead, we saw modernism, more specifically like interbellum, so like between the First and Second World War. That's everything we saw. I can say a lot about that. I don't know anything about European. I know what I know about history of European literature is what I've learned during that English class that I talked about a little while ago, and so I have very fragmented, chaotic recollections of history, but I'm totally lost. That dude, like, the class is so specific. Guess what his specialization was? Oh, modernism? You don't say. It's almost like he just talked about what he loved. Like, this class is something that you get like at the end of your academic road, right? And you want to specialize in modernism. That's when you take this class, not as a first year who is supposed to have like an introduction to history of European literature. Like, a friend and me actually said this as feedback in like our education panel thing. The next one, literature in English. So this was a first year's course, right? So first year students have a lot to learn. Like, I feel like the learning curve at university, maybe I was just very spoiled in high school, but everything was always very structured, and you know, I knew what I had to study for the exams. This is the opposite of structured. We had to read 3 books, which is fine, and then we had to give a presentation. And these presentations, that it was a group presentation, by the way, the presentations that other students gave, that was what we had to study for our exam. So what did we do? In class they would present, and it would take like what, 10 minutes, maybe 20, and the next 1 hour and a half would just be criticism about what they said in their presentation. And we got like the PowerPoints, and we would just write on these PowerPoints like, this is wrong, correction, na. And that was our like study material. Oh, lo and behold, I failed that class. I remember my do-over. I studied so hard because it was just so impossible to just see the structure. I spent so much time just structuring the thing. It wasn't even that much to learn. It was horrible. Lo and behold, also the one chaotic female professor that gave history of English linguistics, that was the one that gave this course as well. Yes, sir. Speaking of her, another course she gave. She like giving, like, the classes are like 20% of her job. Like, she's a researcher most of the time. And another class she gave was research methodology. Ah, man. On the education panel, I remember I said research methodology is a very bad course. It has a bad structure. It has bad timing. And I opened Pandora's box. All my professors have an opinion about this. Everyone hates each other when they talk about this. Everyone has a different opinion. Like, this course is just doomed to fail. So research methodology is where you learn how to write your assignments, like, academically. You learn how to give presentations. What is scientific research? By the time we got that course, we already had to hand in so many assignments and we had to do so much research. And like a year later, we learn how to do it. Oh, wow. It's an entire year later that we will have to choose what we will do for our, like, bachelor's assignment, and our big master's assignment is even a year after that. So in the second year, it's such a weird place, and everything about this was weird. So we had to make this fake it's called a bachelor's paper that you make in your third year, and a master's paper that you make in your fourth year. So I will call them bachelor's paper and master's paper because I'm getting very confused. But we had to make like a fake bachelor's paper. We had to do research and search for, like, sources. But remember, the first year, like, history of literature and English was very fragmented. History of Dutch literature was just a narcissistic dude. Like, history of European literature was just a mess. So, and the woman who gave this isn't really specified in linguistics, so it was a whole ass mess. I chose linguistics, and I chose like a brain development linguistic kind of topic. What made me so angry was that we had to search, like, scientific sources, and it was the first time where we actually were taught the criteria of a good source and stuff like that. So it was really hard to like perfectly implement, and I spent such a long time on finding the perfect sources. When I handed in my assignment, the woman said that my topic wasn't good enough and I had to choose something new. It was too abstract. And the next assignment was just adding to your sources why you had chosen them. So you hand in your list of sources. The next week you have to hand in your list of sources with why did you choose each source. So here's me. I did that assignment. It took me so long. I hand it in, and then I get told that my subject is not good enough and I have to find a new subject. You know what you also have to do when you find a new subject? Find new sources. So, man, that week was horrible. It was a horrible week. I was so stressed out because I basically had to do 2 assignments in one. This course is either supposed to help you as a first year to know what, like, scientific and academic research is, or it is supposed to help you as a third year to teach you, or like to help you write your bachelor's paper. This one is none of the above. It's just a second year course for whatever, like. In the master's we had that course again. I actually did a master's which was more specialized for, like, international students, catering to the standards of my university. I know exactly what I had to do, but a lot of international students had, like, different, like, guidelines or different approaches to scientific research. So they would have to learn everything that we had learned over the course of 3 years. So in my last master's year I had research methodology again, and the professor that gave it, I will talk about him later on, but he was so chill. I can't talk anymore. He told me and my friend, like, you already know everything, so just hand in your assignments and don't come to class. We were like, fine by us, see you never. And I had a good grades for that, thank God. Also in my masters, I specialized in psycho and neurolinguistics. That course was like so hard. It was so much information and I loved every minute of it. I was so focused. It was like, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. That was like the final sprint for me to get my degree and be like completely done with college. And I remember that like the exam was really hard and there were two professors questioning me, and one of them was like, your entire class, your study structure is so weird. Like you remember very tiny details, but you don't have any overview of like the general structure. And I was like, well, heck, I was never asked about general structure. Like to make a good comparison, she would just ask a question about one thing that could occur in the brain, and she would just be like, okay, go. And the thing is that we learn about it like, I don't know, chapter so much, this thing that occurs in the brain. Part 1, this, it's because of this. Part 2, it can also be because of this. Part 3, it can also be because of this. Like, very structured and logical. And I just didn't learn it that way anymore because all of my professors would ask such ridiculous details. I remember that one of my questions on my exam was what Shakespeare's mom did for a living. I wish I was joking, but that was the exam question. I had basically at that point 4 years of experience of having to remember such silly details that for me remembering like a broader structure, that was just something that I didn't do anymore. Speaking of that Shakespeare question, there was this old man who taught us studies of literature in English 2, 3 and 4. Have you ever had a teacher that would just talk to themselves, very monotone? He would not acknowledge the students whatsoever, and you would have to sit there for 2 hours and absorb whatever he said. I never did that. What a lot of professors do is put the PowerPoint online so you can print it and study it. He would not do that. You have to come to class if you want to know what's in the PowerPoint. So almost all of us would come to class, not listen to the professor at all, just grab some paper, and whenever the next slide would come, everybody would just go like as fast as possible, because he would have so many slides that every 5 minutes the next one would appear. That's the only thing I did in class. I would just write like 1 with a circle, no, 2 with a, like that's everything. I didn't listen to him. I never listened to him. You could look around in class and you could just see PowerPoint changes, everybody goes. Studies of English Literature 4, the last one, I just didn't go anymore. We also had like copies that he wrote himself, so he typed it in Word, printed it out, and we had to study that, and that's just what I studied because I really couldn't be bothered anymore. Usually the slides were like his summary of what he wrote, like the short version of those Word documents. He would just ask the weirdest details anyway, so it doesn't matter that I had a shorter version and a longer version. I had to learn everything in that longer version, including what Shakespeare's mom did for a living. This man taught me to learn details and not look at a bigger picture anymore, I swear to God. That was 1.5 years that I had him, by the way. Second to last one is such a, oh man. I was just reading about that course again. I told my fiance, like, this thing still gets me angry. It was a... So you had 3 study points. So if I said that 6 study points was like your lecture and like your like a bigger assignment or a bigger presentation, this was half of that, so 3 points. So basically you would say like a lecture and like a normal sized exam, but nothing too grandiose. But oh no, this woman, it was an 8 a.m. class and attendance was mandatory. Like you would get points taken from you if you were not in class. And my friend and I had like insomnia around that period of time, so sometimes 8 a.m. was when I would finally fall asleep. And my friend was in a similar situation, so we actually faked each other's signatures and like writing style. And then I would take like a blue pen and I would write my name and my signature, and then a black pen and then her name and her signature, and she would do the same for me. It was horrible. And that wasn't the only one. So we had mandatory attendance, which in itself is kind of a dick move in a master's year, because you're kind of treated as if you are a grown-up now, and you're like, you know, you don't need that much hand-holding anymore. You will show up to class if you think it's necessary. But this one, no. And this was, so it's called Linguistics and Literary Studies in Brussels. I lived in Brussels. That was my 5th year that I would live there. So I knew Brussels. The entire purpose of that class was very clearly to like, for international students. Like, it was an introduction to where you are living right now this year. International students. Like, I have been ranting about this, but I don't know how much I'm gonna cut. I'll try to summarize it. So Linguistics and Literary Studies wanted to have more international students because they all have to pay more for the same lessons as Flemish students got. But our university does have a reputation of being harder. Like, our classes are more difficult. I'm so sorry I feel like a fucking Porsche. But to keep it attractive, they would make very easy courses, so that the international students would graduate, but they didn't really learn anything useful. Like, nothing that they were promised they would actually learn, which is like an entire issue in itself. This course was honestly introduced to make Brussels look appealing, like as a city, and like make Brussels look important. What we had to do, we had a mandatory class, we had an exam, we had a group like assignment, and we had 3 individual assignments for 3 study points. The individual assignments, you had to go out in Brussels, do an event in Brussels related to linguistics, one for literature and one for internationality, and then you had to write an assignment about that, and then you had to do the same in group. And the groups, you had to have, like, it was, I think, groups of 4 people, and everyone had to be a different nationality or something like that. And it was impossible because half of the students were Flemish, like, we're from Belgium. So I swear to God, there was like a big room with a lot of students. We went to the blackboard and we were like, okay, who's from Malaysia? Raise your hand. Who's from the USA? Who's from Belgium? And like, this professor, like, it was in class because, like, professor, this is impossible. We cannot make these groups because there's too many Flemish people. And she was like, nah, it's fine. It's such an honor to have so many international people in your group, which it is. It was very interesting to hear like different points of view and like cultures and like backgrounds and ways of thinking. But it was impossible because there were too many Flemish people. So we wrote every nationality on the blackboard, and our professor was like, I'm so proud of my students, look how they're taking initiative. Meanwhile, we were frustrated as heck. It was 8 in the morning and we had to tell our professor, who has a list of every attendant, that we could not make groups of 4 different nationalities. Eventually, she ended up like splitting the room. Okay, people from Belgium on that side of the room, people from other nationalities on that side of the room. Okay, now make groups of 4 with like 2 Flemish people and 2 international people, and we still had too much Flemish people. So in the end we had like groups of 3 Flemish people and 1 international one. It was an entire mess, and that was just a start. The only positive thing about it is that she graded, her grades were very high. I remember that she said, I made like a very, very, very stupid mistake on my exam because I was tired as hell. And she said, I'm sorry, I'm going to give you like a low grade. I was like, I just want to sleep. And she gave me like a 12, which is not considered low. A whole ass mess. A whole mess. I want to end on a positive note. My favorite professor was amazing. He had to like replace one of our linguistics professors for a while. I think he's gone actually. But he was just so good at his course. He was like calm. He explained everything so well. I had to do a presentation, and like right before I had to do it, I actually received some very bad news, so I was just crying. And I didn't come to class. I was there. I just didn't enter. I was just sitting there in the hallway and I waited for 2 hours, and I was like, Professor, so this thing just happened. I'm sorry I didn't do my presentation. I swear to God, other professors would really just be like, I don't give a shit. And he really was like, okay, I've heard, you don't have to explain yourself, just come to my office and we will do your presentation there. And it was a very good presentation, if I do say so myself. I was, you know, the informal thing I said in the beginning, that presentation, I was like, you know what, fuck it. And I opened my presentation with a joke, which was this very over the top, like it was in PowerPoint, right? But it was like, my name presents, and then like the topic, and then some curtains open with like applause. It was a joke, but he had to laugh so hard. I was so happy. And just, I remember he would also be like up to date with technology. That's the criteria for being a good professor. But honestly, he was the same one that said like, you don't have to come to this class. He also did a lot. He did a lot for us. Or this one time, now I'm just rambling. Okay, I'll just give that example and I'll like end the video. There was this one time where we were talking about Iceland. I remember it was Iceland, I think. There was this Bethel. I really need some water. There was this battle that we were talking about, and one girl of our class was like, actually they won because they used this strategy. And my professor was like, you're interested in that? Can you tell us more? And she was like, actually, like, yeah, it's one of my biggest passions. And he was like, take the stage. So this girl was like, so, and she started like telling about this battle that she knew a lot about. She was like really passionate about it, and the professor was like, you know more than me about this subject. I will ask you to help me this class. Like, he was so much fun. I miss him. I should send him some chocolate or something. Anyways, that was me mainly ranting about my time at university. I hope you enjoyed this video. I will see you all in my next video, hopefully soon. Take care, everybody. Bye.